I'd like to welcome you all to this new webinar of the GEI that we are organizing together with our implementing partner, CLEAR Francophone Africa. Today we have a very distinguished panel of speakers that will walk you through on what it takes to make M&E systems resilient, and especially when we talk about fragile context. This is a webinar of a series of webinars that we have been organizing in order to make sure that local knowledge and local experience get spread globally. So I'm very excited to get this started. And without further ado, Edoé, I'll pass the microphone to you. Thank you.
So it is a pleasure to welcome you in this webinar. As was announced, this is the 11th webinar of the GEI on issues of developing national evaluation systems. We organize these webinars because we want to promote the use of data, the use of highlighting knowledge in terms of M&E locally. And in this webinar, we are going to take a look at the issue of developing national systems, M&E systems, in situations of fragility, fragile situations. And for this purpose, we have brought together panelists who will be presenting their different experiences, who will present to us the experience from the point of view of the World Bank, but also experience of countries that are undergoing various development situations in terms of monitoring and evaluation. We will have the case of Benin, we'll have the case of Congo, of Pakistan, Central Africa, and also GEI's experience based on what has been learned all over the world. So to begin with, I will introduce the topic later on, and then I will give the floor to the panelists, who will each have 7 minutes to share their experience on this issue. We hope that you will come away from this webinar with a few solutions in mind on the way in which the systems can become more resilient, more sustainable in the face of contemporary challenges. And then for about 30 minutes, we will give you the floor to also share your own experience or to ask questions if you have any. So without further ado, I will begin my session with the aim of fine-tuning what we wish to discuss during the seminar. As announced, the title here is Challenges of Building Resilient M&E Systems Amid Political and Administrative Instability. So the question that we would like to clarify to begin with is, what do we mean by national evaluation systems? Well, as concerns at GEI, we decided to focus on promoting data, promoting evidence in order to improve public policies and improve living conditions in a systemic approach. What we mean by a systemic approach is to make sure that we do not conduct evaluations in an isolated way, but we factor in an entire ecosystem that is set up in order to plan, implement evaluations, use them. This implies the participation of different stakeholders, including individuals, actors in civil society, the media, but especially what we see here as conductors of the system, the government. So governmental entities, ministries, parliament, but also different other parts that get involved in the system. The idea is for evaluation to participate in this planning, policy planning process, but also in terms of implementation and learning in order for the better implementation of public policies. There are a number of objectives for this purpose, and we can find four categories of objectives that aim to measure the government's performance, that aim to improve the definition and implementation of public policies, objectives that aim to assist decision-making when resources are to be allocated, and also to improve accountability and transparency. And in order to support these different and achieve these objectives, we need a number of aspects having to do with request for evaluation, led by the ministries, by the political analysts, by program managers and heads, universities, but we must also have systems that contribute to the service offer in terms of evaluation, such as, for instance, different firms and so forth. And in addition to that, it is necessary to have systems that enable the distribution, circulation of information, capacity building, but also coalitions and partnerships that enable the different stakeholders to speak to each other, work together, and serve the objectives that have been set for the ecosystem. So as a national evaluation system, that is what we're talking about. This choice of objectives, of mechanisms, demand and offer mechanisms to support the implementation of evaluations based on national priorities, and that will make this system a functional system serving decision makers. What we are observing is that both in the process of setting this up, this is not a straight path. Sometimes there are obstacles that block the implementation of national evaluation systems. We also observe situations where certain countries that already have an established system sometimes experience backsliding or slowing down of the implementation of evaluations for different reasons, often linked to political, administrative, or other instability of our systems. And when we talk about political instability and administrative instability, here we can locate them, organize them in two categories. The first category is the type of instability that occurs in the normal process of administrative bureaucracies. For instance, when we have a ministerial reorganization, that can end the process of setting up a national evaluation system or slow down the operation of the system simply because the ministry has disappeared. We've seen in a number of countries certain ministries in charge of evaluation that disappeared pursuant to a ministerial reshuffling, which led to no longer having a functional system per se. You can also have some instability simply because of appointments of persons who happen to be the focal points, focal contacts, the contact persons, and who then are no longer able to be the key contact person for these systems. Sometimes it's reforms that are implemented that lead to a change in priorities, focusing on different other reforms. There can also have situations where democratic alternance, so simply because there's a new president or a new prime minister, everything changes, and the process for setting up a monitoring evaluation system is then in upheaval. And then you can have leadership issues between the heads within the government, can lead to upheavals in the M&E system, the national M&E system. These are things that we observe in normal everyday management of M&E systems. But there can also be the second category of instability factors linked to unforeseen events, such as, for instance, if in the event of a coup d'etat, a military coup, where you no longer have the normal management, governmental management, or violent conflicts, where it is difficult to find the actors who are legitimate, who can speak on behalf of the system. Or sometimes there can be social tensions that create tensions, for instance, between parliament and the government, between the National Assembly and the government, or between civil society and the government. This can lead to blocking in the system's operation. These are systems that we have observed in a number of countries where the GEI operates. So what we wish to say as a whole is that this instability has major repercussions on the system, and these repercussions can occur at three levels. First of all, in the very environment of M&E processes, we can see that the priorities have changed, so the evaluation is no longer a priority for the government, or sometimes even evaluation then is fought against, or there can be connections or misfunctions in the system because the realities are no longer respected. And organizationally speaking, there can also be repercussions linked to political instability and on the individual level because individuals have changed. This situation is important to take into account today because if we take a world map, we can see that fragility and instability has become practically normal internationally. So we can no longer talk about developing national evaluation systems without factoring in these important elements.
That's the reason why those who will speak today will present their answers to develop resilient systems. We will hear one after another. Lauren Kelly, she is the lead evaluation officer at the bank, and she has more than 20 years of international experience on M&A, and she has carried out many evaluations, and she continues to evaluate conflict management, natural resources management, and she will present, based on her own experience, certain tricks, so to speak, to improve the national evaluation system. After Lauren, we're going to hear Amna. She is the director for Africa and Central Asia, and she has a vast experience in following countries with their system. We would like to hear aussi Abdoulaye Gounou from Benin. He is the Director General for Evaluation of Public Policies in Benin. And then we'll have the opportunity to hear Daniel Mikayoulou, the President of the Congolese Evaluation Association, and Patrizia Cocca also will share with us her experience in the GEI. So now I'd like to give the floor to Amna, the director of the Center for Learning and Evaluation Pakistan. She's going to explain to us how, in the case of Pakistan, they carry out the process for reinforcing or developing the national system for evaluation. Amna, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Edoé. I hope you're able to see my screen. Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for having me on this panel. I will be talking on behalf of, the country that we have worked in, but specifically talking through the lens of Pakistan. In the past few years, we have seen a lot of instability in terms of our political landscape, and where the challenges are there, which Edoé has also mentioned, They all are very real and they exist. Just to, top on that, or, just to add to that, uh, instability also what it leads to is very, short-term actions and very much of firefighting in the system. And what happens is that, you move away from the larger picture, or, a bigger system level change or policy implementation, and you just get stuck with a very narrow tunnel vision. And that in itself becomes a very big challenge, because what you are looking at is a system level, evaluation system, either development or reinforcement of it. The second thing that we have also realized, due to this constant instability, there's a lot of trust deficit in the system. So when you go and you offer solutions, internally, the internal and the external clients and stakeholders, it takes a lot of time to convince them to actually start with something new, or, innovate or bring some newer solutions. So how are we navigating through those, difficulties or challenges? Because they are going to be there. But our job or our task is actually to go beyond those and see, while they will remain there, some of them will remain there, some might change, but it's an ever evolving situation. What are the things that we can do to at least improve the systems, or start creating demand for something which is not there? So first and foremost is something we have to widen the network. And rather than just looking at the federal government, though that is the ideal situation when you're going in, and especially talking about a policy engagement or an implementation, to take a, top-down approach. But in our case, what we figured out, once the federal government, or the government changes, there are too many moving pieces, and there's a shift in all that has already been done. So what we have been looking at are those stable actors in the system, whether in the bottom or at the top, which will continue to stay, and where you can continuously train and do capacity building and institutionalize all these initiatives, so that whenever even a new system moves in, those efforts are going to carry on. What we've done is we have been very actively engaged with the civil servants in Pakistan. And because they are those office bearers and decision makers, even though, they keep rotating, as Edoé also mentioned, but they're part of the same system. So the expertise don't get lost. So even if, you're engaged with one actor, even if they move, the other actor which comes in, you've already been engaged with them. So just to give you an example, we have signed an MOU with the National School of Public Policy. So whereby we train all the civil servants, who are in the system and who are the decision makers eventually. So no matter which government comes in, those are your actors which are there. And even if they rotate, the new actor also knows you. There's a higher chance that your engagement probably will continue, because they understand the importance of evidence-based decision making. Civil servants are one. Then your office bearers. A lot of times we forget that the political actors, they change, but the office bearers, they are there for the past 10 years, 15 years, 20 years sometimes. They know the system in and out. So once you work with them, you start involving them in the work, and you introduce some initiatives, they are there to stay. The other part that we have very often seen, and once again, I'll limit it to our experience in Pakistan, and other colleagues can share their experience, that the fragmented efforts by a lot of different stakeholders lead to diluted impact and inefficiencies. So you would realize that once you go in and you're working with, policy actors, the same work is being done by another donor or another, civil society organization, not knowing that similar work or work stream is being led by multiple actors. It does not have the impact or the pressure that you can put on the government otherwise. So creating consortiums, it's not a battle that you can win alone. So you need to bring in expertise of all these different actors together, build consortiums, and lead these initiatives. So that's something else that we are looking into. The other part where we actually pivoted to, while keeping the engagement with the federal, because that is the most important layer, In Pakistan, after the 18th Amendment, there is, devolution of power, because of which the provinces are equally powerful in some of the matters, especially education, health, and some of the other areas. So the policy making lies with the provinces. So while we are interacting with the federal ministries, we are also looking at provincial actors, strong actors, where they are demanding for M&E structures, M&E systems, and working with them and turning them into success stories or building them as case studies, which can then further, lead to federal level demand. So that is something of a model that we have also being tested. And lastly, I mean, there are many other strategies, which I'll just, uh, being respectful of the time. So the last, and I think one of the most important things that we've realized, while the vision needs to be a very longer vision and you need to know where you're heading towards, but making or breaking your activities initiatives into, phased activities, so that you have some quick wins to show. Because when there is so much of, trust deficit, you can't go in and not show results. So it is something that you have to look at, low hanging fruits, achieve those with the eye on the longer term vision. So again, not getting stuck in the tunnel vision and, looking at project level, but no, it's just something where you need to head towards. But then you focus on some quick wins that can be then further shared with others, and it can promote the use of evidence. And I think I'm just on time there. So I'll, hand over the mic to Edoé, and I'm happy to, answer any questions later.
Thank you very much, Amna, and thank you for being on time, right on time. Thank you very much. It's much appreciated.
This discussion is, of course, enriching us with 4 lessons that we learn: engagement of actors, cooperation among all, the need to work at lower levels, decentralized, the level of the provinces, to make sure that the effects are lasting in time, and also the need to commemorate the little wins, the little victories, and to capitalize on that. Well, this is what we have learned, what we do in the Asian region. And now we're going to hear Africa, the story of Benin. And I'm going to give the floor to General Director for Evaluation of Policies in Benin, and he's going to talk to us about Benin's experience.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be able to take part in this discussion, to share with our community Benin's experience on this topic that we are discussing this morning. Well, after the introduction that was made, trying, of course, to make the system resilient in the situation that we confront now, we have chosen the strategy of institutionalizing evaluation. So evaluation becomes an important function, permanent function of the administration. And the choice that we made has proved to be very good, because the function of evaluation along the time is working, and it's evolving and improving. And so Benin engaged this work at 3 levels. The first level is the institutional level. And at that level, the country has created several instruments, legal, institutional, and regulatory institutions, to carry out evaluation and to make evaluation a real function of the government. From the organizational point of view, what we have done to allow the function evaluation to be carried on along that time in spite of all the challenges. So we have implemented instruments that promote this function at the national level. And this instrument is organized also in 3 levels. The first level is the strategic level. And what we've done at that level was to put in place a national evaluation council that set the aims and the practices that we have to do at the national level. So under the strategic level, we have the tactical level. And at this level, technical level, we have defined a national policy that aims at setting the rules, the roles of each of the actors, and to identify the key actors for the process and define the interrelations that must exist so each person can take real part in this implementation at the national level, and also to carry out.
We have a number of standards that enable the different actors to handle the issue of evaluation in the country. Now, operationally speaking, the decision was made to build a national capacity building system, first of all, with training institutions, and we have a number of 3 specifically that we can illustrate here, which is the National Administration School in the country, a partner in the process to strengthen capacity in terms through training, a private university that handles certain specific aspects in evaluation, in particular, the School of the Economic Institute of a compatriot. It's a project of the World Bank, and we are looking at aspects that are connected with impact evaluation. And we also have a center with the University of that analyzes public policies. So as that also is part of capacity building, nationally speaking, to support the promotion of institutionalizing evaluation. That's the first aspect in terms of capacity building. The second aspect, the country decided that in order to support and promote this function nationally through public administrations, to build strategic partnerships, and that means participating in conferences and organizing national conferences. On the national scale, this is well known now. We have a biennial, that on evaluation that is held and enables the different national and international players to update their knowledge about evaluation. And also with the participation, international participation. So what we can share with the panelists, what we consider to be elements of success and what can be further improved are 3 key aspects for success. First of all, we have a national policy. That's important. That maintains the system in place despite various vicissitudes. Secondly, we use guides with norms and standards that enable people to practice evaluation. And lastly, an important aspect is the existence of a law that supports this function nationwide. We nevertheless believe that there is room for improvement. Some things need to be further improved to become more resilient, and that is to have a specific budget to support this, remote evidence-based data, systemizing evaluation practice, developing an evaluation culture, and lastly, have a national communication strategy so that for all of the involved stakeholders to be able to keep them informed on a day-to-day basis of the different projects related to evaluation. So for Benin, this is what the situation looks like. And this is why for the past 17 years that we've been involved in this process, despite the different institutional changes, such as we presented to you, this function has remained present because it isn't a single person doing this. It is a whole set of people, a set of measures that are legal, that are regulatory, that constitute a framework for this effort. And that is why the function is still in existence and keeps moving forward. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for this rich contribution that enables us to see how, at the national level, on a hands-on aspect, using regulatory tools and also setting up different training and capacity building efforts, as well as partnerships, it becomes possible to support a system such as this one over time, despite various vicissitudes and fragilities that may exist. I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions in the chat. We will soon have the Q&A session where you will also be able to ask questions. But do feel free if you have any comments or any questions. Don't hesitate to interact with us in the chat. This being said, we will now move from Benin to Congo, Brazzaville, where we will hear someone from civil society in evaluation from the Professional Association of Evaluators in the Congo, who will share his vision of things as part of the development process. Mr. Daniel, President of the Association of Professional Evaluators, you have the floor.
Merci, Monsieur Edoé.
Thank you, Mr. Edoé, and thank you to all the others. My intervention will be based on 3 points. I will begin by presenting an overview of the institutional situation in the Congo, and then I will talk about the aspect having to do with the impact of the system on and its the impact on M&E, and I will end with the actions that undertaken by ACA to contribute to building and to the resilience of these M&E systems. So an overview regarding the political and other institutional instability in Congo. After the armed conflicts in 1997 and 2002, that we had armed conflicts in 1997, and these conflicts continued until 2002. After that, the situation became more stable, and in the past 10 years, the Congo has enjoyed political stability. So when I say political stability, I mean by that that Congo has no longer experienced any deep political crises, no coups over the past 10 years. So the institutions, public institutions, have been operating quite regularly. This being said, institutional instability in the Congo is marked by recurrent reshuffling by the government. And since 2002, Congo has experienced about 10 reorganizations of the government. And the consequences thereof are, as is the case everywhere, is first of all, the fact that you have you have mobility, you have the people who are in charge of evaluation who move around. Because there are a number of people who are in charge of evaluation in the ministries, and usually they switch to other ministries, and this creates some upheavals in the evaluation process. Secondly, because in the ministry there's no institutional memory. Generally, in our ministries, there's some databases, there are information systems, there are few evaluation tools, but they're not always operational. And everything is in the memories of the managers. They have the documents, they have the tools. And when these managers leave the ministry after a reorganization, they take all of this with them, the data, the information, and so forth. And this creates problems in a number of ministries that experience this. And lastly, you have an interruption of the whole the companies, the reforms, all of the things that have to be set up again. And because of these reorganizations, this is what happens. This shows that in Congo, the instability, institutional instability due to recurrent reorganizations has negative impact on developing a national M&E system. At the same time, I'd like to point out that in Congo, the national M&E system is being built. I would even say, without exaggerating, that it is still in at the embryonic stage. Because when I take the different pillars presented by Mr. Edoé, if you take the pillar of objectives, for instance, in Congo, we have documents that clearly define the tools for evaluation. We have the law, for instance, on the performance of public action. We just had the decree on monitoring and evaluation. We have M&E systems for the National Development Plan. We have a number of documents. We also have actors who are deeply engaged in M&E, the ministry in charge of state reforms that's linked to the premature, and also the National Development Plan that's in charge of evaluation. And we also have a civil society that is strongly engaged. And now we have an opportunity, which is precisely the process of shifting the budgets, a process where monitoring and evaluation is important. So you see, we have all of the elements that build up an M&E system, but these different elements are not articulated within an overall system per se. So the level of evaluation is still, the demand for evaluation is still weak, so is the offer in Congo, but we do have a few tools. So what are the actions that we are implementing in Congo to reinforce the construction, the building up of a national M&E system, and especially in a context where resilience needs to be increased? Our institution, the Congolese Association for Evaluation, is playing an important role in terms of advisory and technical support to the government and even to the civil society, because we are an association that is a member of the Consultation Council of Civil Society Organizations. 1 minute left. 1 minute left. Okay. So these actions are essentially, we focus on reinforcing the institutionalization of evaluation, and we're setting up a database that will be the hub, the key for an observatory by civil society of evaluation. And this observatory will be part of the larger African observatory. And we're working on this with the World Bank, with the universities, and we have a number of important development partners in the ministries. And lastly, we're talking about we are working on digitizing evaluation, which is also important to ensure resilience of the national M&E systems. To conclude, this association is very strongly engaged in building the national system for M&E.
Merci beaucoup, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for this wonderful overview of the efforts that are being undertaken in the Congo. Even if this is a system that does not exist, there are a number of things that are being done thanks to your support and the support of the Congolese Association of Evaluators in partnership with the government, and where the association plays the role of providing technical assistance to the government. We are now going to give the floor to Lauren. Earlier in the chat, there was a question to the partners, or a question that asked, how can we ensure that the systems, the M&E systems can be mutualized, so to ensure that the governmental systems work better. So without answering the question directly, we want to give the floor to Lauren with her experience as an evaluator in the bank. She will explain to us how she sees the possible solutions in order to have a resilient M&E system. Lauren, you have the floor.
Bonjour tout le monde. How are you? Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much. I don't know if I can answer that question right away, but I will give it my best as I work through my remarks today. So thank you all for having me today. It's an honor. Again, my name is Lauren Kelly. I am the lead for Sustainable Development Evaluation in the World Bank's Independent Evaluation Group. I speak here today as my own person, but I also bring, as the original speaker said, over 20 years of evaluation experience from the point of view of a major institution. So let me begin. Okay, I want to bring together some of the remarks that were made so far. And what I note is this really wonderful confluence of activities that are occurring in the region, in West Africa especially, around the development of laws and policies and supportive policies around M&E and evaluation more broadly. And so what I'm hearing is there is something that donors like the World Bank absolutely need to build on, because as the last speaker said, these may be embryonic, but I think they present a very ripe platform, a ripe moment to support M&E systems in your countries. So with that, let me talk about the World Bank for a minute. And I thought about what I would say, and I thought about the following idea. In many countries, and especially in West Africa, you see through many different systems a shift to country systems. You see a very large increase in development support as compared to investment project finance. You see a very large increase in performance-based lending. And these are the kind of lending vehicles that support budget support, that support, national systems, and that need to have strong data collection systems, strong analytics to hold governments to account. Let me just give you a couple numbers right now. Some of the speakers today have talked about donor fragmentation. Some of you have talked about working with the donors to support your centers. But let me give you a couple numbers that I find fascinating. Last year alone in West Africa, there were 491 active lending projects in West Africa alone, representing something like $60 billion of donor finance, okay? I think our colleague in Pakistan talked about donor fragmentation and the plethora of work going on across those 491 projects that each have their own M&E process, their own results framework, their own small bits and bobs of financing for M&E. This has to come together. Let me give you another fascinating statistic. Just in the last year or so, I've seen about $2 billion in budget support go to West Africa alone. $500 million to Benin. I thought this would go to Nigeria. I'm looking at Benin. I'm looking at Congo. I'm looking at Togo. I'm looking at countries that didn't normally receive such large sums of budget support. Getting this budget support, this is a game changer, all right, for the way that we see data collection, monitoring, and evaluation for donor finance. And this is only from the World Bank, by the way. This is only the World. I'm saying these numbers just blow my mind. So let me go on to my remarks. These budget support systems require the use of countries' own M&E systems. That is stipulated in the effectiveness of these loans. In investment project financing, there's about 2% of the finance of that project that's supposed to go to M&E. In development policy financing, I'm talking about now about $2 billion worth of money. Countries are supposed to use their own M&E systems. So where do they get that funding and that capacity from? Additionally, there is a cry out for development organizations like the World Bank to then provide parallel technical assistance or parallel project financing to support the kind of data collection, statistical data collection and analysis that's needed to underpin these national systems, the budget support for national policy actions. And I was just looking at one today, and I want to share it with you. And that is a new $500 million program in West Africa for West African statistical capacity building, from our IDA. And those funds are going to divisions in ECOWAS, WEMU, the African Union, and they're all for evidence-based policy making. They all have the objective of increasing accountability and transparency as part of our efforts to promote regional harmonization, to stretch our funds even more, and to build statistical capacity building for evidence-based policy making. So I've begun by my remarks by saying that as we're shifting to country systems, and as we're looking to countries to use their own finance and their own means to do data collection and analytics for these systems, that it's imperative also on donors to develop also the tools to support you to do this. And that comes from other means, technical assistance and investment project financing, and of course, government's own resources, including in kind. So what does this mean for also countries that are going through massive amounts of turmoil or disruption? And I want to make 3 points on this. One is that while you're going through these, I think there's been 4 to 7 coups or attempted coups in the last 3 years in West Africa alone. I think 4 have been successful, am I right? Mali, Niger, I'm thinking out loud, I have to recall them all. But as you're going through this intense turmoil, what can you hook onto? How can you stay the course and help building the capacity in your multi-stakeholder evidence, organizations that are supporting evidence-based policymaking? I was thinking about the way that we engage at the country level and our own country partnership frameworks. In 2014, the World Bank reformed the way that it did its country strategies. These are supposed to be more evidence-based. They're supposed to focus on country outcomes, not project outcomes. Our country strategies are supposed to have country monitoring and evaluation systems. They are supposed to focus on donor collaboration, and they need data. And they need data to monitor country outcomes, not project by project, but where a country is going. And I want to talk about the fact that many of your countries have received increased allocations from IDA as part of our fragile FCV turnaround regimes. These turnaround regimes support action plans that are discussed at our boards on how to monitor not just development outcomes, but turnaround actions around improvements in stability, resilience, and moving away from fragility that require national systems. I'll give all the links, I promise. These are all really important for you to know. But let me stay here at the country level. Country partnership frameworks and the means
one more minute, Lauren, please.
Yep, monitor country outcomes and how you're going to stick to those kind of country program frameworks that exceed the project level. I want to talk about 2 more things, and then I'll end my remarks. As part of that country monitoring and working with donors across these donor collaboration efforts to monitor country output, you have 2 other really important vehicles. Donors are switching to borrower systems as part of their environment and social framework systems. They all have standards around stakeholder engagement. They all have grievance redress, and they all have transparency and disclosure requirements. All of those systems are supposed to be country-led. Those environment and social framework systems pervade all projects across all donors, and you need monitoring on top of all projects to ensure that your projects and your donor aid is environmentally and socially sustainable. There is finance for that, and there are ways to engage. I want to say one last point, and then I'll turn over to the next speaker or to our concluding remarks. You talked about the fact that you are in many cases in West Africa, in situations of transition. I looked at some data also that's showing that in West Africa, if you look at the data, the state of your institutions outside of your M&E institutions, but your political institutions are showing some fraying in terms of their democratic nature. And democracies need evidence. They need transparency and accountability supported by evidence gathering, disclosure of that evidence for good evidence-based policymaking. That means something more than achieving good development outcomes, but it also means delivering on anticipated good governance and human rights aspects of development, right? And so what I find also very exciting about this CLEAR and GEI initiative and all the work you're doing in your institutions is that the evidence-based policymaking that you're supporting is supporting more than just good development, but it's supporting healthy, good political systems that create transparency and accountability within your systems. So I thank you for that. I congratulate you for that. And thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Lauren. And that's quite good introduction to what Patrizia will say on GEI, the lesson learned from the experience of GEI and what we can take away from that. So Patrizia.
Thank you, Edoé. And yes, that was a perfect introduction, Lauren, to what I wanted to say. And I think this is the reason why the GEI was created was exactly to try to foster collaboration among different institutions and organizations. I'm going to briefly just cover this in 30 seconds, just to tell you that when I talk about the GEI, I'm talking about the entire network. It's a network composed of donors, associate partners, which are other international organizations for most part, but is also composed by a global team of which I'm part, and where I lead the communication and knowledge management team based in Brussels. But then most of our work is done through our implementing partners. The country work you have heard from Amna. Edoé is the director for the Francophone CLEAR centers in Africa. And we have implementing partners all around the globe. Similarly, the capacity building is done through training facilities. IPDET is one of them, and UP is another one for Francophone trainings. And then as a global team, we managed to import a knowledge platform that I hope everybody knows. And these are better evaluation and the global evaluation week, which will start shortly, actually. So this is to let you know that when I speak and refer to the GEI, I'm referring to the entire network, and we are spread all over the world. So one of the reasons why the GEI was created was because we wanted to make sure that all the effort in building capacities in M&E system was strategic and coordinated. And we all work with these kind of fundamental values that you can see here on the screen. Country ownership is one of that. The journey to improve evidence-based decision-making has to start with the local ownership. And the GEI offers advisory support and technical guidance, drawing from its network of partners and donors. And it does so while emphasizing also that we need to use methods that are culturally specific and that are locally owned, so that every approach that we take strengthens the M&E systems. Another way to increase the ownership of the country is by considering the environmental issues that every country is now facing, and that are particular to the context. And therefore, that also increased the country ownership on creating the M&E systems, because it has to be context related. Inclusion is another core value of ours, and the GEI network is really working hard into including gender in its agenda, as well as youth, to support a more inclusive development of M&E systems. Collaboration, I will not duplicate what already has been said, but one of the other things that we do to further the collaboration among our institution and partners is through two big knowledge platforms. Better Evaluation is method repository and approaches, and there is also a repository on how to create M&E and strengthen M&E systems. And then there is the local Evaluation Week, which is a festival of evaluation events that talk about M&E and evaluations in different contexts and from different point of views. And then there is the cultural responsiveness. We strive to be culturally responsive, and the diagnostic tool that we have developed together with the CLEAR centers a few years ago is actually a tool that can be really customized to the country-specific needs. So through the work that we have done in the countries, I asked my colleagues to give me what were the high-level lessons learned that they had come up with throughout the years of interactions. So these are not my findings; these are actually findings of my colleagues, but I have the honor of presenting them. So first of all, this is something that already the speaker from Benin told us earlier, is that we need to have systems that are adaptable and flexible, because the contexts really change rapidly, and therefore we must take into account that insecurity, political instability, or shifting power dynamics can be always there. The second point is that we need to really count on local ownership and participation to make sure that whatever M&E systems we are creating is relevant, is sustainable, and makes the power accountable. Effective M&E systems require participation. And when I talk about participation, this includes governments, but it includes also communities, civil society organizations, local experts, and so on. Another lessons or key principle that is important to consider when creating M&E systems is the simplicity of this M&E system, the M&E system that have to have. Often if
Hello, Patrizia, can you hear me?
being user-friendly and easy implementation. There is also another principle that was mentioned, which is about integrating this effort with actionable things. It was the quick wins that Amna was referring to, but also like having plans and action-oriented programming, so that the whole effort of creating an M&E system doesn't become irrelevant. We also think that using technology innovation has to be at the forefront of a way to collect data. Remote sensing, GIS mapping can be all platforms that can allow us real-time monitoring data collection, and can enhance the timeliness and the accuracy of the data collection, especially in environments with conflicts or where it's challenging to collect data. It is fundamental that the M&E process is endorsed and backed by the power structure that is in place, and therefore it is crucial for whoever is supporting the creation of the M&E system to be including and have strong relationship with the political principles and with other entities that might be a group of influence. And finally, but not least, is the continuous need for capacity development and knowledge sharing, because through strengthening both capacities at individual levels, but also institutional levels, we can ensure that there is more, a better and improved local expertise, that we foster learning, and that we sustain M&E on the long term. And so with that, this is the end of my little presentation. Edoé, I get back to you. And in the meantime, I'm going to put on the chat a long list of links to several tools and resources that we have on our websites. Thank you.
Yeah, that will be perfect, because someone from the chat asked for training programs. So if you might also share training programs provided by GEI, that would be great.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup pour vous qui nous suivez jusqu'à présent.
Thank you very much for those of you who have been following us up until now. You've heard the different presentations from the panelists. This leads us to understand that setting up or developing national evaluation systems of monitoring, resilient monitoring M&E systems is not easy. It requires a well thought out strategy. It requires interventions at different levels in the regulatory framework, in terms of the technical tools, in terms of partnership development. It is a rocky road. It is not an easy one. However, it is possible if you take the right measures to make the system resilient, participative, and practical. We will now open the discussion to you, give you the floor. You can just raise your hand. We will be able to take your questions, or if you have any comments or experiences that you would like to share with us, this is the opportunity to do so. You can just raise your hand and we will give you the floor.
If you have any question, please feel free to raise your hand and we will be pleased to give you the floor. Meanwhile, in the
meantime, there were a few questions in the chat that I would like to share with the share out to the different panelists. So one person called out Mr. Gounou regarding the role that evaluators can play to make the system resilient. Another question regarding how the partners can mutualize their M&E systems to support the resilience of these systems in the countries themselves. I think that this is a question that Lauren touched upon already, but if there are any other panelists who wish to react to this, please come in. Also, the observatory, is it autonomous to be able to independently represent these evaluations? And a question to Amna and Patrizia, how can we take into account the cost of factors in setting up M&E systems?
Take into consideration the cost factor of M&E system. So that's a question probably for Amna or any other panelists. And the last one, is there any recommended digital system that can help consolidate multiple sectors in a country? So
we'll give the floor to different panelists to answer these questions. I will begin with Mr. Gounou. Yes, thank you very much for this presentation. Thank you to the other colleagues, other panelists, and all of those who are online asking the questions. This is an interesting question that testifies to the interest that we're all that interests us all, namely the resilience of a monitoring and evaluation system. Now, as part of this panel, we did not talk so much about what a national evaluation system is, M&E system is, but this being said, the first question asks, what can the role be of the emerging evaluators to support the resilience of these national M&E systems? It's very simple. We said this briefly in our presentation, that resilience involves the pillars we spoke about, the existence at the national level of a capacity, a national evaluation capability. That is a fact. It is an important factor when you want a national evaluation, resilient evaluation system. It involves having a pool of professionals in this field. And the emerging evaluators for us are an important target that is key if we want to develop this over time. In the case of Benin, there's a program, an entire strategy that has been implemented to incorporate these young evaluators who are coming up. This through what I mentioned briefly, the partnership we have with the university, different universities, and several institutes that train people, train young people who are interested in this profession and whom we receive we take them into our different divisions to have an internship experience. So that is a first step in bringing in young people into this profession so that we can be sure that they will be able to follow up on this. Second question, would it not be timely to have partnerships between states to consolidate our national systems? Yes, it is true that since 2016, for instance, in Benin, Benin came to where it is because Benin worked along this rationale, a partnership between peers who use more or less the same system, the same approach as concerns the evaluation function on the national level. This cooperation between South Africa, Uganda, and Benin, for instance, led to creating a continental organization that we call Tunibile, that enables us to learn among peers. And so the success of one party can inspire the others, and the failures of one can inspire the others. So we learned a great deal from this type of partnership. We benefited in terms of consolidating our system, not to mention the fact that we have also developed key partnerships with international institutions like the UNDP, the Francophone and English-speaking countries of Africa. We have these partnerships that are reinforcing what we're doing in terms of good practices, in terms of methodologies, and also in terms of organization, organizing the system. And as far as I'm concerned, is the Observatory for Social Change that we represent, can you freely conduct independent evaluations? On that aspect, I have to say very quickly how we're organized in Benin. In Benin, we have a difference between evaluating projects and programs and evaluating public policies. So as concerns public policy evaluations, the Directorate General for Evaluation, that is us, basically has full control over this process, whereas as concerns different programs and projects, we do not have control over those because that is handled by a different entity in the state of Benin, and it's the presidency. They have an institute that handles that aspect. But the connection between these two different undertakings is that everybody in their own position must use the standards and norms that have been determined at the national level to carry out the work that they need to do. So as far as we're concerned, as the National Directorate for Evaluation, we chose in Benin for reasons of independence, of trust and reliability. We chose to manage the evaluation process at the General Directorate and entrust the actual practice to professionals who are outside of the ministry. They're the ones who do the actual production. That is how we handle this, to avoid being considered partial in assessing things in the production that we're responsible for.
That was a very important question that I would like to invite Amna, Lauren, and to respond, which is the question about the cost factor of the M&E system. If we consider that, especially in countries which are basically poor, do we really consider that cost factor when we are building capacity on M&E? What Amna, could you share your thoughts on that? And then
No,
Lauren.
absolutely. No, that's a very valid question. And specifically talking in terms of where there are not only scarce resources, but sometimes even the capacities are very weak. One, I think a lot of times what we see in programs, the theory of change is very weak. So you really need to know what is the goal or the outcome that you're reaching out for, so that you're not misusing your M&E efforts. That is one. Second, you need to consider whatever resources you have to build their capacity. And when I say capacity at individual level, it is important, but that is where the institutional level capacity building becomes utmost important, because that is where they're working, understanding what are their needs rather than going forward with generic trainings, knowing what are their problems, what is that what you will offer to them is going to be useful and that will be applicable. So trainings which are of practical usage, that becomes very important. Thirdly, when we are going and offering solutions or methodologies, not going for very expensive solutions. So RCT is something, not a lot of programs, and in unstable environments, it is anyhow not possible. So looking at methodologies, which are, again, what we talked about, something which are quick fixes, which can offer you result, which can be of encouraging nature, that you can do an M&E, you can show some positive results and encourage others then to take upon it. So you inherently create demand through your work, through your, phased approach and your smaller initiatives. I hope that answers, some parts of your question.
Yeah, sure. Lauren, do you want to jump in, or Patricia?
Maybe just a couple comments, if I may, then, on this question, and it's not going to be satisfactory, but when you ask the question, I think about the costs of not doing good monitoring and evaluation. We often call that bowling in the dark. And do we ever actually think about the counterfactual then? What don't we know and what that costs society? And I'll think the human costs also. And I'll say two more things. And some of the speakers have talked about, and this piqued my interest, independence in both the monitoring and evaluation functions, and what it means to support not just the data collection and analytics, but maintaining the independence of these agencies and the costs associated with that, both in terms of institutional costs, right, and also the financial costs of doing that. And I like that the last speaker was also talking about the proof is in the pudding. These things around credibility, utility is part of an independent function. So that's not a fig leaf, but really an integral part of policymaking. And I think that's something that we struggle with all the time, right? I want to say one last thing about third-party monitoring. I didn't have a chance to talk about it in my remarks, and that is the growing use also of third-party monitoring. And I'll put another link in the chat on that. But I think it's incumbent also, as you grow your systems, to think about also the role that you play in providing oversight and guidance and instructions and support for these systems that are, that are really growing in number, frankly. And I say that because when I've looked at third-party monitoring systems, I see three things. I see an over-reliance in technology. And so there's all of the qualitative work that has to come through, also understanding context and that training. Okay, and I think donors are guilty of that. And then I think there's also this idea that third-party monitoring is inherent conflicts of interest, and also ethical issues that surround also these tools, in terms of the human-centric approaches that we use for collecting data in conflict-affected areas. I think your institutions, and I'm moving now to third-party monitoring rather than cost, but I wanted to raise this, have a very large role to play in guiding the future of third-party monitoring in conflict-affected areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Patrizia?
Thank you. Now, I don't have anything to add to this, but I saw that there are a few hands raised, so I would like to give the opportunity to other questions.
Yeah, I saw Ian. You say Ian de Oput.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Great presentations, great topic. Greetings to everybody. I think one thing which I think it's been implicit in a lot of what is said. The fact in Congo we have elements that don't come together into a system. The fact in Benin we need more utilization, development of the culture. But the central issue is the demand side. Who is really asking for the results of evaluations and for evidence, not just to satisfy the donors or to negotiate the next agreement, but in order to govern our country? What is driving that demand? Because if we get that demand consistent and strong, a lot of the other problems, I think, are going to be sorted out. And I think we need to give more explicit attention to the demand. And I think this is connected to the interesting concept that came from Pakistan about trust deficit, and the other issue that came out from Congo about the continuity. And I think one of the characteristics of the Benin experience has been the continuity over time, which has allowed, to maybe foster this demand and to build on it. But my crucial question is a plea to how do we foster, create, express, encourage, articulate and demand, which will be both from decision makers and I think more and more from public demand and civil society. So the role of civil society in promoting this demand, I think, which then decision makers have to take into consideration. That, I think, is the crucial energizing factor that will pull together the various capacities and keep us going and make us resilient. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Jan, for this very valuable comment. Thank you. I have two other hands raised, so I will ask them to come in. Dahiru Abba. You said Dahiru?
Hello?
Yeah, hello. Yeah.
I think I'm having a network challenges down here.
We can hear you. Hello, can you hear us? Maybe Roger, can you jump in by the time Mr. Dairo is reconnected?
Okay. Vous m'entendez? Bonjour. Vous m'entendez?
Oui.
Hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. Good morning, everyone. Congratulations to all the speakers for their presentations. I have a question for Mr. Gounou from Benin. I followed his presentation and I am very interested in creating an evaluation system, especially to see what each actor must do in a national evaluation system. Now, when it comes to Benin, what was the role that was given to the national network for M&E in Benin? What was the role of that association? What was the role that was what role of this association in Benin? Thank you very much for this question, because that's the role also of the civil society. Daniel and Gounou, you're going to answer the question a little later during conclusions, but we're going to hear now another person who has the floor, Madame Veracita. Mrs. Florence, go ahead. Florence?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hi, can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentations. I must confess, I missed some of it, mixed up timelines and things, but I joined just enough to hear the brilliant conversations. I want to follow up with Ian's brilliant question about demand. And I would like to share the example of Kenya that shows that demand can be created from inside of the country at the highest political levels. And that is what really gets things going. Mm-hmm. When the third president of Kenya was elected, very popular move, it was actually the opposition that won that year. And the whole idea was the government needed to prove to the people that their new policies were working. They created an interesting policy system and started what they called NIMES, the National System for Evaluation, and put it in the planning ministry, created a department, and that started this whole notion of institutionalizing, investing in the monitoring and evaluation. At the time, data was collected, but of course, and what happened was they used economic officers and put them in various departments and ministries to support monitoring. However, by the time the next government came, the department became almost a shadow of itself, and it took the country over 13 years to finally approve a policy, the national evaluation policy, just to show that high political leadership is critical for instituting monitoring systems. My last point to make is to change the view that evaluations are imposed by donors or used principally by donors. I think we have to understand our political systems a little better and follow through by even talking to opposition leaders so that they would be interested in monitoring and getting the evidence to even fight the government in power based on actual evidence of performance. So I think that example is what I wanted to share, that it is possible. It has been done, even though it's now a little shaky in Kenya. But I agree that the examples that Benin and Uganda and South Africa have given are excellent. I want to thank you for the excellent presentations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Florence, for this very worth sharing comments on how important the high-level decision makers can be in sustaining the national evaluation system. I think we are almost at the end of the webinar now. But, hello. Where Mr.
Hello,
Gaillou? Yeah.
Can I come in?
Yeah,
I'm having
yeah.
an audio
Please
problem. I'm not hearing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me. I'm not hearing.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Please go ahead.
The uncle, the host.
Hello, can you hear us? Non. Donc, je pense que nous sommes arrivés pratiquement à la fin de.
I think that we have come to the end of this webinar. We are going to conclude by asking the different members of the panel to speak their conclusions in 1 minute, 2 or 3 words about the questions and the comments that were made, especially the comment about the importance of the role of the high-level policy deciders. I'll give the word first to Mr. Daniel. We have 1 minute to conclude. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Day. I think that the demand is a very important pillar for our association. And what we've done to increase demand, so we insisted on institutionalization because the text and review work need the buyout on the part of the ministries. And second, we also reinforce the capacity of the civil society. So the civil society should be an advocate for us. We also use partnerships, technical and financial partnerships, because it's important to have their technical partners to be part of this too, and also those who provide finance for the process. And the diagnostic of the national capacities that we have undertaken showed very clearly the importance of promoting and reinforcing demand. And we've done that through the ways I just pointed out to you. Thank you. Mr. Gounou, thank you very much. In terms of demand, we've also thought in Benin that demand was a very important part of all this. So we have identified three key actors to reinforce demand: the government, through their public organizations at various levels of the country. And then the civil society organizations have made pressure to instate these public policies. And then the national opinion, of course, the National Assembly, of course, controls the administration. So the administration uses all this data information to make decisions. That's how our system is organized. And we were working with all these great actors to strengthen demand at the national level. Now, when it comes to the role of the National Network for Evaluation, we're very clear about that too. At the institutional level, this network is part of the National Committee for Evaluation, CINI. So in terms of guidance, this National Association for Evaluation exists, and it helps us to define the strategies for national evaluation.
The second role of this association is the role of professionalizing evaluation practice. So the members of this network must absolutely be professionals in this area and participate not only in reinforcing the capacities of the members, but also in promoting the ethics and the practices in evaluation at the national level. So that role is carried out by the National Association of Evaluation Professionals, and we look at the policies and the laws that were voted in, and also their own protocol as a national network. So globally, that is what I can say about the practices. Thank you very much. Lauren?
Lauren, your last word.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to support so much what the other speakers have said. They are in more important positions than I about generating demand. But I'll say one other thing, which is that, there's this place also for even when demand is generated, for implementation of policy and understanding how implementation also, the role of M&E for implementation. So the idea that any policy can be put in place, well informed by evidence, but how is that policy actually implemented? And so the sustained and resilient role of M&E systems at the national level to also support policymakers, including oppositional groups, to think about how policies affect people as they are actually put on the ground. So just with that, there's so much room for this, and thank you for having me again. Thanks, bye.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I think that in the question, there's this concern not only regarding the mechanics of the demand, the quality of the demand, and who is putting forth the demand. That is a very important aspect that we must continue to think about.
Amna, do you want to come in for your last word before the closing? Amna?
Apologies, I couldn't hear you. So, once again, thank you very much. I think it was extremely insightful discussion, and I couldn't agree more with all the already answers given by our panelists. What I would though add to it is that part of demand creation is also disassociating the negativity associated with evaluation. Because once they think that this is where you will be holding them accountable, and this so our journey of creating that demand, because we are also at a very nascent stage of that demand building, or having that demand in the country, especially at the decision making level or the top level, ensuring that how we depict monitoring and evaluation is in terms of gaining learnings to improve, to better make decisions in light of data, and then aligning their incentives. So you can't have your own systems coming in against with what their wishes or priorities are. So you really need to find that very fine line between those incentives and align them, and that is what we have been doing, either through networking or capacity building. It's very much built into that process of constantly mentioning and bringing it on the top, that it's not just accountability or making you stand in front of others in a negative light, but it is something positive which is going to help you in whatever you are trying to achieve, and in return help the country and the citizens and the overall ecosystem. So once again, thank you very much for having me in this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. You are all wonderful. And the closing remark of Patrizia now to you. And thank you all for participating in this webinar. So I will hand the mic to Patrizia for her closing remark.
Thank you, Edoé. Thank you very much to all the panelists and to all the participants. Great questions. And yes, I think one of the things that I was thinking now as you all were speaking is the role of this kind of events also to spread awareness on the importance of the use of evidence in decision making and what we can do in order to strengthen M&E systems. And I hope that the GEI will continue to do so through a series of events. And it's not just a hope, we actually are going to do that. So my last remark would be inviting everybody to please join us in the Global Evaluation Week. It will take place the first week of June, from 3 to 7 of June. There are 370 events all over the world. Organizers are sharing local experiences on different aspects of M&E system and practices. So we hope that you can join us. The launch event will be May 29. And with that, I conclude today's webinar. Thank you very much, Edoé. Thank you, Amna, Daniel, Abdoulaye, Lauren, and everybody that has been supporting us. Thank you.
Thank you a lot. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Amna. Thank you a lot.